Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Art of MMA, episode number 14. First real episode of the year. Me and Brandon back in the saddle. Brandon, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing good, man. It's good to be back.
Excited to talk about some fights.
Yes, sir.
There was quite a few things going on in the holidays, but at least one of the things we didn't miss by taking some time off for the holidays was the fights. There was no cards. We got UFC's first card of the year coming up this Saturday. It's going to be on ABC, which is something cool and original. They haven't done that before. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Unfortunately, everybody knows we are missing somebody. So always our thoughts with the DaSilva family. If you check out our last episode, we did a very special episode where we took some time, shared our thoughts on Sergio and how much we miss him. So that will always be in the back of our minds as we go forward. But we're 99.9% sure Sergio wanted us to go forward and to be successful because that's the kind of person he was. So here we are, me and Brandon back in the saddle. We are going to attempt to try to get some special guests on over the time, but I thought the first episode really back, it should just be us, since we kind of are the core of Art of MMA, the podcast. So here we go. Brandon, we were kind of talking about a lot of stuff with Yoel Romero, kind of bouncing around where he was going to end up. And you definitely thought PFL was a spot. He ended up going to Bellator. On the other hand, one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about because it happened after our last episode, the last full episode, was Anthony Pettis. He was fighting out his contract. I personally thought there was no doubt he was going to go to Bellator because his brother's there. But I was wrong. I didn't really get your thoughts on the time, but not even 48 hours after his last UFC fight contract wore out, he signed with PFL. What do you think about that?
To be honest with you, I was shocked as well. I too thought he was gonna go to Bellator. For some reason I just didn't think of the PFL for him, but I'm kind of glad that he did because I mean a lot of things, like a lot of people, like, you know, they kind of like talk bad about the PFL, but to me it's like if you're a person that wants to fight, the PFL is gonna give you fights, you know, with their tournament theme, because like that's how it is. Like if you want to stay active and you want to fight a lot, the PFL is the spot to go. Plus, two, you get paid, and then you get to fight for $1 million as well. Like, why not?
Yeah, I mean they got that major contract with ESPN now. They got some fights scheduled for, I believe, April 23rd is when they come back, and then they go throughout the year. I have two problems with this. One, the only reason I believe he took it, and even he kind of hinted at it in an interview with MMA Fighting afterwards, was he didn't have to wait to work his way back up the food chain. He said if he went to Bellator, if he went to ONE FC, he kind of have to start the bottom and try to work his way up to a title shot. Here, he can be a champion within a year. So I think he's kind of like crapping on the roster, thinking he can just run through everything and get his title within a year. And two,
Nah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, man. I just cut you off, but I was gonna say, nah, I don't think that. What to me is, I feel like it goes with what I was talking about. Like, you know, with the PFL, you're going to get a certain amount of fights. You win the tournament, you become the champion. Now, I think if you went to Bellator, I think it would be the same thing as like Ben Henderson. Like Ben Henderson didn't have to wait that long. I mean, if he were to get the W's to get a title shot, I think if he came to Bellator, he rattled off like 2 wins, he'd get a title shot.
Oh,
But the
I
thing is,
agree. I don't think either one would have made him wait, but that was just
yeah,
what he said.
but the thing is though, with Bellator is how long would you have to wait? With the PFL, you can do it out in all of 2021. While with Bellator, you might have to do 2 fights this year, and then you wait next year in 2022 to get that title shot.
Well, that takes me to the next point. The next point was the reason why he did it. Obviously, money is a big factor. I'm not going to discount money, but he wants to be the face of PFL. And in Bellator, I mean, you're talking about. I personally agree with you. I don't think he would have had to wait very long for a title shot. You know, Scott Coker likes to line up those names, and him versus Pitbull for 155 would be a no-brainer, or 145 if Anthony was cut all the way down. But he's been fighting a couple fights at 170. I don't think he's going all the way down. He's fighting at 155 in PFL. Even then, I don't know if he'll stay there. I think he's had some hard weight cuts, trying to cut down to fight Aldo and everybody else. I don't think he wants to go below 155 at this point. But Anthony Pettis versus Pitbull, Anthony Pettis against Benson Henderson again. There's so many fights you can make in Bellator that you really can't make in PFL. So I feel like he did it, and this is just my personal opinion. I haven't had a chance to talk to Anthony about the situation, but because he wants to be the face of the brand. He wants to be the name that everybody thinks of. And for one, I think there's two fighters I can think of that'll have a problem with that right off the bat. Lance Palmer, who the last 3 years has completely resurrected his career in PFL, winning the $1 million himself at 145. And when I think of PFL, he's the first name I think of nowadays. Now that people like Justin Gaethje and everybody else have moved on from World Series of Fighting to UFC, Magic, Marlon Moraes, and some other names that used to be in the World Series of Fighting. Lance Palmer's been there since it was World Series of Fighting. That's why I bring that up.
Yeah.
And then Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison, quite honestly, is the name that people attach with PFL right now. And then they're lining up her and Carissa Shields sometime in 2022, not even right away. They're giving Carissa Shields a chance to kind of grow. So I feel like Anthony Pettis is kind of like, this is going to be an easy road for the title and for the money. And I hope he just doesn't trip up on his own words, because even though he won his last fight, and I believe he's won his last couple fights, he hasn't looked like Anthony Pettis for a while. I don't know. Maybe you think different, but.
Nah, you're right. I mean, but also too, you gotta think about like the
and
fight.
I'll give you the last word on this guy.
Yeah. I mean, plus, so I was gonna say, like, you have to think about, the people who he has fought in his last few fights. Definitely, top-notch guys. It's not like he was having cakewalks or anything like that. I mean, his last fight, he did try to go back to a couple of things of that he used to do, as Anthony Pettis, back in the day. But the guy who was fighting, I think his last fight, like, he was just like, I mean, he didn't really move or anything like that, but I mean, he was just kind of like a straightforward guy, because I think he knew, hey, if I give Anthony Pettis space and time, I'm gonna end up on the highlight reel. So that's why I think, like, sometimes you don't really get to see all of the things that Anthony Pettis used to be. But I mean, I don't knock him for trying to be a face of the PFL, because when the PFL first started, I want to say that's what Will Brooks was trying to be. And we all know who Will Brooks was, man. You remember, he beat Michael Chandler not once but twice, went to the UFC. It didn't really pan out. But then, hey, the PFL, that was his resurrection. But the tournament didn't go that well for him. Like, to me, is like, I say the tournament is either gonna make people, because that's how we learned about Michael Chandler. Like, Michael Chandler was a nobody. He won that tournament, then he got to fight Eddie Alvarez, and then boom, next Michael Chandler became a name. So to me, either Anthony Pettis will become the face of the PFL, which he kind of can be, because we all know who he is. But if somebody gives him a good fight, or somebody named that we don't know beats him, then next we're going to look at this person and be like, oh, this is the next big thing, and then that can help progress their career as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's kind of taking it for granted, and I guess we'll see how it all plays out. There's so many people that kind of go to different promotions. Benson Henderson going to Bellator, for one, thought he was going to be the king and go back, and he struggled mightily. So you never know. The grass is not always greener, but best of luck to Anthony Pettis. Now we're going to move on to some really, we said this before the show, knock on wood. The UFC has kind of released their spring card stuff to kind of look forward to. We're going to talk about some fights looking forward to. We're not going to forget about one that's near and dear to Brandon's heart. Obviously, in Bellator, we got Pitbull versus AJ for that featherweight crown. So we're definitely looking forward to that. They announced a date for that yet?
No, they haven't. Bellator has announced the next card yet.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see when they do that. I'm probably thinking maybe February or March. We'll see Bellator's Grand Prix final for 145-pound title. Patricia Pitbull versus AJ McKee Jr. So that's going to be an exciting fight for them. They have a lot of stuff, going on. They're matching up Yoel Romero probably with Anthony Johnson. So keep an eye on Bellator. Keep an eye on PFL with Anthony Pettis and debuting on April 23rd, and their season getting started with Lance Palmer. Interesting to see what they do with Carissa Shields. We just talked about that. But the UFC has got a murderer's row. We're finally going to get Usman versus Burns, allegedly in February. And on that card, we also got a fight that we kind of talked about before with Uriah Hall and Chris Weidman. When Usman and Burns line up, how you see that one going?
I mean, I've always been down with Usman. Like, that's my guy. Because I know for their original fight, when they were supposed to fight, he actually left Was it, man? What's it called? What
Top
the
team?
gym, the gym that they're at. He left them to go hang out with
Or no, he was with the Black Zillions
Trevor
for a
Whitman.
long time, so I'm not sure who he's with now.
Yeah, no. They're all in the same gym. What is it?
Are you talking about Burns and Usman both?
Yeah. They all train at the same gym. Was it Sanford MMA? I think that's how you say it.
I think so.
Right. Yeah, because Phil Hawes is there, Michael Chandler's there, all those guys are there. But I remember
Sanford MMA. Yeah, I don't know why I stumbled with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember at the last time he went to go train out with Trevor Whitman, to be at a different gym, have somebody else coach him, so that way Gilbert Burns, can stay with the team and they can all, do their own thing. Like, to me, honestly, out of MMA, like, if I had to choose to be with another coach or anything like that, Trevor Whitman would be my guy. I just think he's
very the hot special name right now.
Yeah, especially with striking, he really knows what he's talking about, but also too, I mean, he's just that guy to me that cares about his fighters as well. So I think hanging out with Trevor Whitman, also, getting some rounds with Justin Gaethje as well, hanging out with him, I just think that's gonna help Usman get that W.
Yeah, I mean, Sanford MMA has been growing. They got Rosenstruck. They got a whole bunch of guys. Gilbert Burns, obviously. Yep. They have a lot of the old Black Zillions in there. I believe they have one of their main trainers as well. Yeah, they're definitely growing. I think I got caught in the hype to begin with when that fight was first announced. Burns was coming off that big win over Woodley. I was just like, he looked like an unstoppable train. But there's two things you need to think about with that fight. One, Burns, I believe, was with COVID, right? So You don't know how his wind is going to be. A lot of people post-COVID have a really problem with their lungs. You're seeing with Chimaev now. That's why the Edwards fight got pushed back. That's another fight they're talking about early this year with no date yet. For Edwards' sake, I hope he gets a fight at this point. Otherwise, just let him out of his contract because they're just holding him hostage. But a lot of people post-COVID have a lot of problems that they don't really foresee, especially I can imagine getting in that cage, getting that adrenaline dump after the second, third round. Gilbert Burns has always been a guy that had really good cardio, but you don't know that's still there. And against Usman, you better be ready to go all day because Usman will take his time. He doesn't need to rush. He'll go 5 rounds if he has to, and they'll just keep coming at you. You saw in the Masvidal fight, he knew Masvidal was going to come out fast.
Yeah.
And then he just wore him down, hit him with like 5,000 foot stomps, and took the, kept the title. So that's one fight definitely to look forward to. Another fight coming up after that, they finally got Blades and Lewis rescheduled. A fight that happening before that actually is the Overeem Volkov fight. Of course, we all know about McGregor, Poirier, Hooker, and Chandler. We'll talk about that in length next week. I don't want to kind of get too much into that this week because that's kind of the big preview for the 23rd when we do our picks for that fight. Of course, Holloway and Kattar come up this weekend. We'll talk about that later for our picks. A little bit later on, another fight we'll talk to you about. Blachowicz versus Izzy is official for 259. They also got Nunes and Anderson on that card. They also got Peter Yan and the Funkmaster rescheduled for that card. And they also got Thiago Santos and Alexander Rakic on that card. So pretty stacked card from March. I'm kind of looking forward to that one a lot. And I, unlike a lot of people, actually think Blachowicz is going to give Izzy a whole world of trouble. But what do you think?
I mean, to be honest with you, like of those 3 title fights, that's really probably the least of my fights that I'm really looking forward to. Because in my head, I'm just like, Izzy, you just stay at 185 and let like Glover get that title shot. But I mean, I think Blachowicz might give Izzy some fits, but it's one of those things, man. Like if Izzy keeps the striking, I say he wins it all day. But if Blachowicz tries to get his hands on him, tries to take him down,
I just think Blachowicz will make it dirty.
Yeah, like I'm saying, I think it'll be a different story. But I
you
still
saw
see
Reyes try to get technical with him, and he just kept coming.
Yeah, but I mean, but Izzy is on a different striking level. He can make you miss, and then he can make you pay.
No, I agree 100% with that. I just think every time somebody sleeps on Blachowicz, it's kind of like Glover Teixeira. He's just going to keep coming forward, and you got to like pretty much put that guy in the ground to finish him, or he's going to get right back up. And I know you're looking forward to that Nunes Anderson fight, but me personally, I just think I don't think Anderson's on that level. I've seen her struggle with some fights, and she does win. She is the former Invicta 145 champion. This might be the only fight for Nunes at 145 to keep that belt alive. But I'm sorry, I just don't see her challenging Nunes. And then I'm definitely looking forward to that. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say no. Like my thing with I'm glad this fight is happening now than it was like originally supposed to happen, because I think when she originally was thinking about getting the title shot, I just thought it was too early in her career. I mean, to me anyway, she still hasn't had enough fights. Like I feel like she's only had like eight or nine fights in her career, while like Nunes is like in the teens or maybe even in the 20s.
I just think they're trying to keep that belt alive. I really they made that belt for Cyborg. Nunes kind of took it away, and now they just have no one. I mean, Holly Holm can fight at 145, but she's definitely way better at 135. Randami can come up to 145, but she's happy at 135.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Megan Anderson. I don't know. I guess I'm just intrigued to see how Nunes handles somebody taller than her, somebody who really is a 145er. And also too, like she comes from a good gym. James Krause, I think is her main coach. So I'm kind of see what game plan he can come up with to help Megan Anderson fight Nunes.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think, Sergio famously always said that there's levels to this. And Megan Anderson's a really good fighter. She's not Amanda Nunes, no way. And Nunes ran through Cyborg. Like at 145, that's the only fight to make if they somehow ever work. I mean, Cyborg never stops talking about it. So I don't think cross promotion's 100% out the door, but it's 99.9% never going to happen with Dana. So I think the name they wanted was Carissa Shields. She signed with PFL instead because she wanted time to learn. UFC said, all right, we're going to give you one fight, throw you into a big fight. Carissa Shields was like, I don't want to look bad. I want to learn MMA first. She went out to Jackson Wink. Now she's training. She's going to get PFL under her belt maybe a couple years down the road, but who knows if Nunes is still fighting a couple years down the road. She just had a baby with her wife, Nina, right? So, I mean, you never know what kind of family situation she wants to move on with her life, She hasn't faced competition in so long. Who knows if she wants to keep doing it? And then, of course, the other fight on that card that everybody, I think, is looking forward to is the Funk Master versus Peter Yan. And that fight keeps getting moved back. So we're hoping we can get that for that card. I have my leanings, but where do you think that one's going to go?
Aljamain Sterling. That's what I'm rooting for. That's what I want to win. I don't know, man. Like to me, I still thought Peter Yan had lost to Jimmy Rivera. Like to me, man, he caught Jimmy with two shots at the end of the first and second round, and it was like, bro, to me, you were losing the fight. Like I just don't see anything really, really special on Yan. I think Aljamain's got the reach on him. I think he'll use his wrestling, and he might even catch him with a submission.
You don't think Jan's kind of earned that respect though those last couple fights? I mean, he beat Aldo, who didn't look like worn down Aldo. He looked like Jose Aldo. Like Aldo had a second chance to get a title. He definitely came to play. Uriah Faber, I would argue that that's definitely on the downside of Faber's career. In the Jimmy Rivera fight, I agree with you. It could have gone either way. But he basically, to me, dominated Dodson. And it's also not a very deep division. Funkmaster, I'm a huge fan of Aljamain Sterling forever. Like him and all of those Long Island MMA guys, I've just been a big fan for a while. I don't think he knows what to expect with Yan. I think he thinks that he can come in and stretch Yan, maybe get him in a submission, get him caught in something. And that's 100% possible. But Jan's got some power in those hands. And I don't think Sterling's been hit by somebody like that. And Jan's not going to sit there and let Sterling grab him. So I think if it goes to the ground, I think it's Sterling. I think if it stays standing, I think it's Yan. And if it goes deep, I've seen Yan go 5 rounds with Aldo and finish him in the 5th round and look stronger than he did in the 1st round. I personally think Jan's going to win that one. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping Sterling wins, but that's just a heart over head type decision. Another thing on that card real quick, and then we can move on. Just because to me, it's a personal favorite. I cannot wait to see Rakic and Thiago Santos go toe to toe. Like, to me, that's going to be a war. You excited for that one?
Hey man, I'm always down for dudes that bring the action. You know, I think it should be a banger as well. You know, it's one of those can't miss fights. You know, where you definitely know is going to be nothing but action.
And then one other fight, Derek Brunson versus the Trailblazer, the Dana White calls him the Mouth, Kevin Holland. So that fight's going to be in March as well. I actually just think, unfortunately for Derek Brunson, even though Derek did look good his last couple fights, I just think that's a feeder fight for Kevin Holland to kind of like hold him over until he can get a title shot, or at least get in that picture in some kind of like eliminator fight. Any other fights you want to talk about this year before we start moving on to some other stuff?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm surprised because I want to say it's February 13th. I'm surprised you didn't want to talk about
I want
the
to talk
heavyweight
about
title.
I want to talk about everything, but you know.
Well, I mean, I kind of thought you would have brought up the heavyweight championship. I want to say that's when it is, February 13th.
So the problem is, you talking about Ngannou and Stipe?
Yeah.
The problem is they haven't put ink to paper.
Oh, okay.
And I just heard Ngannou talking yesterday. So there's a few fights that we obviously want to talk about that could happen. Ngannou's getting really tired and restless of waiting. Stipe's like maybe March. Like right now, I think March is actually the last I've heard for that one. Obviously, they can't do it on that big loaded card that we just talked about on March 6th. But we'll see. You know, maybe somebody drops out. Maybe that things move around. I think March 6th is the one that Stipe actually wanted to fight on. So maybe they move it up to February. Maybe they move it back to April. I think it's going to happen sometime in the spring. I just don't know when. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I don't think it goes any different than the first. I know everybody's on the hype train for Ngannou. He's looked amazing his last couple fights. Stipe is just so smart. He knew he wasn't going to go toe-to-toe with Ngannou last time. He grabbed him. He made it dirty. He wrestled him. He got him down and just kept punching him in the face. He didn't try to like go too fast, too strong, too quickly. He just kept wearing him down. And Ngannou got gassed after the first round. It was just easy pickings for the last couple rounds. So I don't see it going any differently. Do you?
I mean, to me, it's all about who he's been training with. Who hasn't gotten been training with? Has he been working on his wrestling? Has been working on if he gets taken to the ground, getting back up? Because I want to say, I think in his last fight, I want to say he had Usman in his corner. Now, Usman has an older brother who's a heavyweight, so those guys could be training together. So this way, Usman could be helping him with his wrestling. You know, this way he can try to at least get his wrestling defense up to par. But
yeah,
I'm not sure if he's still hanging out in Vegas. You know, because I think he trains with a Syndicate, which is still a good highly well-known gym as well. But I just don't know if they got any heavyweights or any like wrestling people to really kind of help him out with his wrestling defense.
My thing is this: Ngannou is like Mike Tyson. He comes out, he throws a flurry, and he intimidates people to the where they're not fighting back and they get caught. That fight against Rosenstruck, let's be clear, he came out, he threw a flurry. They were all wide winging punches. I mean, you're a striker by default. You know when you see it, it's not clean. Ngannou just kind of bull rushes you, bullies you, overpowers you. And then what? See, the thing is with Stipe grabbed him. Stipe made it dirty. Stipe's not going to box with Ngannou. Stipe probably could. He has a lot of boxing skill, but he's not going to even try. He's not. Why put yourself at risk? Last time he just grabbed him, held him, wore him down. People forget Stipe's a world-class wrestler too. Yep. He went toe-to-toe with Daniel Cormier, not even blinking. And if it wasn't for what I consider, and no disrespect to Daniel Cormier, because he's one of the greatest fighters of all time, he got a lucky punch against Stipe that first time. Stipe was winning that first round, and he got caught. He didn't think Cormier could hurt him, and he did. And that's not a mistake. He's already felt Ngannou. This isn't new for him. So I just don't see it any differently. But I guess we'll see. Maybe he's been trained a little bit more on his wrestling defense. Most MMA fighters evolve. Even Michael Page has evolved. And that's another guy who's got some fights lined up that I'm looking forward to too. They're talking about getting him in the title eliminator as well. But I don't see anything going differently if he fights Lima or anybody else. So fortunately, Michael Page, I think he's more of excitement than he ever probably will be a champion in Bellator. But That's also the people in front of him. He's not going to beat Musasi, and he's not going to beat Lima. So, what's left for him? Yeah.
I don't think he's fought Lorenz Larkin yet, right?
Yeah, but you're talking about to be a champion.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to go through those two guys. Musasi would just stretch him. Musasi's another smart fighter who's going to take his time. If he can box you, he'll box you. If he can kick you, he'd kick you. If he wants to wrestle or jiu-jitsu you, he'll do that too. So yeah, I mean, I just don't see a path forward for Venom Page either. But as always with the start of the year, there's so many exciting things looking forward to this year, and we hope they all plan out. We hope COVID doesn't screw them up. We hope injuries don't screw them up. MMA, everything is subject to change. Kind of takes me back to the whole wrestling slogan on the bottom of every card. It was like card subject to change. None of these fights are going to probably take place in the schedule they're trying to take place. We still don't know what's up with Khabib. Dana's going to try very hard this weekend to talk Khabib into one more fight so he doesn't have to vacate that belt and create that whole mess as well. We still don't know what's with Oliveira. We don't know if he's going to take that Gaethje fight or he's going to hold out for a title fight. Dana just said this weekend that it's Conor versus, whoever's probably the top contender, assuming Conor wins, which I thought was kind of crap because then you're thinking Poirier doesn't have a chance to win against Conor? Like, of course he has a chance. Poirier's fought his ass off the last few years. He's not a completely different fighter than when he fought Conor last time, but he's still up there, so definitely something to talk about. We're going to take some time, go into our picks now. Obviously, there's not a lot to talk about with fights right now, so this episode will probably go a little bit quicker, assuming me and Brandon don't spend the next 45 minutes talking about this week's fight card on ABC. It's going to be, I believe, at noon, right?
Yeah, it starts at noon. The main card starts at 3 o'clock on ABC. So
I'll be struggling next week to know if we call it like UFC Fight Island number or if we're going to call it UFC on ABC 1. I've seen a lot of people call it that, so we'll see. But they are back in Abu Dhabi. They are back on Fight Island, Yaz Island. So definitely something to look forward to. We're going to go ahead and break down that card, talk about the main event, Holloway versus Kattar, talk about our boy Carlos Condit being back in action against Matt Brown, the immortal Matt Brown. That's going to be a crazy fight. I can't wait for that one. And then maybe we'll pick a fight each, and then we'll wrap it up today. And then kind of get back into our more long format next week. We'll just go from there. So let's go ahead and start with the main event. I'm talking about Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. Who you got and why?
I got Max Holloway. I know a lot of people are high on Calvin Kattar. I mean, the guy is good, but Max Holloway's still young, man. He's not even 30 yet. So I mean, in reality, he still hasn't even hit his prime. But the reason why I think Holloway's going to win is because
he just turned 29.
Yeah, I think his speed and volume is just going to be too much for Calvin Kattar. Now, yes, Calvin Kattar does have the power to stop Holloway. Holloway doesn't have that same power, but that's not Holloway's game anyway. Holloway knows his game. He knows he's going to be precise. He has the speed. He has the volume. Also, too, I think another thing that I maybe would want to see Max go back to in this fight, if he has to, is to use his jiu-jitsu. Which we haven't really seen in a while. Like his last few fights have just all been really just stand up. But that's just how the fights gets dictated. And I'm sure with Calvin Kattar, he's going to want to just stand as well. But I just think Max should just go to everything, But I just think his speed and volume, if it's just going to be a stand up fight, I think his speed and volume will be too much for Calvin Kattar's power.
If I want to play devil's advocate, I mentioned that Calvin Kattar is probably one of the few people that have a reach advantage over Max Holloway. I believe it's like a 3-inch reach advantage over him, which is something not a lot of people do at that weight class. Max is usually taller and leaner and got more length on everybody. Kattar is actually the exact same height and has a little bit more length than Holloway. So I don't think it's going to give Holloway any trouble. I think Holloway actually beat Volkanovski his last fight. I think he should be the uncrowned champion right now. I don't see Holloway losing to Kattar. I think Holloway's issues are a thing of the past. I think he's gotten his health back to 100%. Nobody really knows with the layoff he's had. He hasn't fought since, I believe, what was it, last summer? Was that?
Yeah, I want to say it was July, I think, when they Volkanovski.
But then again, I don't think Kattar's fought since then either. I mean, I have to be 100% sure, but I don't think Kattar's fought since probably July either. That Dan Each fight, July 15th. So neither one have fought in at least a half a year. So yeah, they fought like 4 days apart. Actually, funny enough. So a good matchup. I really think Max is back on his game. I don't see Kattar. It'll be a challenge. It won't be a runaway, but I just see Max kind of putting his foot back on the ground and saying, all right, you might not want to see me in Volkanovski a third fight, but I'm gonna make it very hard on you not to give it. Kind of reminds me of Benavidez. He lost to Mighty Mouse twice, and it's like, all right, what do we do with this guy? And he had to stay in the main event because he was beating everybody else. Yeah. So Holloway has the potential to like run through that entire division until they give him Volkanovski one more time. You know how good Max is, and like you said, he's only 29. He's not even close to being out of his prime yet. Yeah. Another fight who, unfortunately, I think both these guys are kind of out of their prime, but it's still going to be a very, very fun fight. Carlos Condit came back, got that big win last time. Matt Brown, I believe, is coming off a win also. So these guys, they're not going to go out. They're not going to hug each other. They're not going to, wrestle on the ground. I think Condit and Matt Brown is going to be a banger. I think they're going to go out and try to take each other's heads off. Who you got and why?
Hey, man, you know what it is. Carlos Condit, natural born killer. He's one of my top 5 favorite MMA fighters. I mean, if you just look about just technical-wise, it's Condit. Better striker, better movement, better overall game. He has submissions, right? He has his jiu-jitsu. Matt Brown, to me, I just see him as a striker. He can be clean at
He does have some jiu-jitsu submission skills.
Yeah.
Submission skills. There we go.
Yeah, but again, like we talked about earlier, right? Sergio says, right, there's levels. I think Carlos Condit, he's at a higher level than Matt Brown in everything. Plus, too, again, when we talk about camps and everything like that, I think him working with Brian Gibson, who's like the new striking coach at Jackson Winks. I mean, he has those guys come up with some amazing combinations. Again, he's had Carlos kind of work with his foot movement. Because I want to say in Carlos Condit's last fight, he came out southpaw, which he usually doesn't do. So I think he's going to give Matt Brown some different looks. Some different looks. That he's not used to seeing. And I wouldn't be surprised if Carlos Condit maybe gets a finish in the second round.
Yeah, actually, I was wrong. He actually Matt Brown actually lost his last fight against, was it Luque? But yeah, he lost his last fight. And so, Beza. He lost against Miguel Beza. He actually got knocked out in the second round. So I'm kind of surprised. I guess they needed to give Carlos Condit a solid name because Matt Brown's actually lost like 4 of his last like 5 fights. And I know he like questionably was going to retire for a minute. I think Carlos Condit kind of wins that fight. I don't even think it's close. I think Carlos looked really, I don't even want to say the fact that he looked good. He looked very technical his last fight. He looked fresh. He looked like his strikes were on point. He didn't have an easy opponent at all. So I feel like Carlos Condit definitely came back. I mean, Court McGee isn't going to run away from you. He's kind of like Matt Brown. He'll kind of be right there. But Court McGee could also grab you. I don't think Matt Brown's going to try to grab Carlos Condit. He could. I've seen Matt Brown with a very good ground game before. Like you said, there are levels, but I don't see Carlos Condit losing to Matt Brown. Not now, not 10 years ago. I just don't see it.
Exactly.
All right, man. Take some time, pick a fight. Let's talk about it. What else are you looking to on that card? And
I was thinking, I mean, I do have one fight in my mind that I did want to talk about because I want to give a shout, but then I was like, oh, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the third fight on that card. Was it Ponzinibbio? Because he hasn't fought in like forever, and now he finally has a fight.
Yeah, that's another fight I just don't see like being kind of top heavy. I don't think Lee's going to really give him that much of a challenge.
Yeah, I guess my thing is just like, man, he's just a guy who's been wanting to fight for like ever, hasn't been able to fight, and now he finally has. Kind of like Leon Edwards. It's like those two coming on the same boat. Like they've been wanting to fight forever, but they just haven't had the chance, and now he finally does have the chance. So, and I mean, and he too, like Leon Edwards, man, like he was on the uptick. Like he was a name to look out for.
He hasn't lost in 5 years.
Yeah. So that's what in my head I'm trying to think like, man, maybe if he gets this win, does that maybe then put him back in the conversation, top 5? Because maybe if he wins this one in fashion, maybe it's quick first round or whatever, maybe then him and Leon Edwards could maybe hook up. You know, since that way Edwards isn't waiting so long.
I don't think I've actually followed this situation. Why was he off for the last 2 years?
I want to say he was
Injury?
Yeah, I want to say one was injury, but then I think after he was healed up, I want to say they just like Leon Edwards, like they
had everything for him.
up.
I mean, he kind of reminds me of Oliveira, you know, he kind of was up and down. Well, never really up and down, but he's really only lost 2 fights in the last 7 years, one to LaFleur and the other one to Lorenzo Larkin, which he just got caught. I remember that fight. He just got caught. And then he's reeled off 7 in a row. Kind of reminds me of Charles Oliveira a little bit. Obviously, Oliveira is a little bit more active. But yeah, it's kind of a situation where maybe Dana's not ready to give him a title fight, but what do you do with him? You know, we talked about this our last full episode. Dana kind of has his favorites of who in his mind is ready. And I don't think Dana makes all the decisions. We always put it all on Dana's plate. You know, Sean Shelby and a bunch of those other guys make some of those decisions too. Dana's always the face, so he gets all of our blame and very little of our praise. So I don't give Dana White the credit too much. So I will say this one time, Dana, this is not all on you. So to apologize slightly. You're a prick every other time. So I'll say that. He ain't coming on the show. I'm not even an Ariel fan, but I'm still mad at what he did a couple years ago where he could try to like ban Ariel just for like dropping the Brock Lesnar news. Yep. I'm like, what's he supposed to do? Of course he's supposed to say the name of the fight. But we got kind of sidetracked. Go ahead and pick I know you had another fight in mind to talk about.
Of course, the other one is just my man Phil Hawes' fight, man. You know, I'm looking to see what his second fight is gonna look like in the UFC, because his first fight it was over in like less than a minute. So hopefully maybe this one can go just a little bit longer and we can see what he's about. Like the only thing I'm just a little worried about is like, man, we all know really that Phil's a wrestler, and usually, man, with wrestlers, when they start getting those knockout finishes, then they start to love their hands. Like I just want to make sure that, you know, I just want to see hopefully like he still is seeing the whole game, because like that's what I kind of feel like what happened to like Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler was a wrestler, and then, you know, he started getting some finishes, and next you know, you don't even really see him use his wrestling anymore. He just stands up and you know, and it just fights like that. While like Usman, he says he knows he's a wrestler. He straight wrestles you. He'll grind you out. Same thing with like Colby Covington. They're wrestlers that grind you out. I just want to see Phil Hawes just do it all. Like I just want to make sure that he's not gonna just fall in love with his hands, and you know, he'll also use his wrestling as well.
I like Hawes in that fight too, but I would be careful trying to wrestle Imavov. Like he's got a submission game, so he's kind of he's not the one I really want to kind of challenge on the ground. But as a lot of those European fighters come over, they usually have a pretty good wrestling background too. It's not. I don't want to sound dismissive, because obviously you have people like Khabib and other things that just bring wrestling to a whole new level. But most wrestling, especially Imavov is from France, they're not quite on the level of American wrestling. So we'll see how he pairs up with Hawes. I think Hawes just has the striking advantage in that fight. And even though you say he probably should go, I think the quicker he gets Imavov out of there, probably the better, because if that goes in deep waters, that could go either way. I saw Imavov against Jordan Williams, and he was basically, once that fight went past the first round, he just kind of controlled it. And I feel like that could be the same thing with Hall. So I think Hall's needs to try to get him out of there quickly. The one fight I'm really looking forward to on the card is actually also on the main card. Dusko Todorovic versus Soriano. Both are undefeated, 10-0 versus 7-0. Neither one, though, has really, I don't want to say hasn't faced the challenge yet, but neither one has really kind of faced each other, that kind of style challenge yet. Todorovic looks so good against Daquan Townsend, but Daquan Townsend, for better or worse, is a journeyman. He's been that guy. He lost, like, I think every one of his UFC fights, but he fought like 4 times, 5 times. And they've all been tough fights, but he's kind of like a gatekeeper. Yeah. And then Soriano, you know, I could name all the fights he's had, but you probably wouldn't know any of the people I named. He kind of came up in that LFA, Titan, that FC, B3 fights kind of circuit, and just really kind of rose to the scene like really fast. He was on Dana White's Contender Series, beat Jamie Pickett, and then he beat Pachota he got a big, quick knockout in the first round against Pachota. So it's kind of like, all right, let's see what each of these kids got. Both are young, both are ready to kind of like go up to the next level. Both came from Dana White's Contender Series, so we'll see who goes. I think Todorovic has the more all-around game, but what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I liked Dusko from his last fight. I remember it because I was like, oh yeah, I remember exactly who he was. So I'm looking forward to see his progression as well.
Yeah, that was back in October. That was like probably our second episode.
Yeah,
and or maybe third, 22nd, 29. Yeah, we talked about it on the third episode, and there was like a bunch of other fighters on that card that were kind of like quick fights. It was on that Holly Holm, Aldana fight card, and then there was just so many stoppages in that card that we were talking about Duran to me and obviously Holly Holm. So he kind of got buried. We did mention him, and I was actually kind of thoroughly impressed the way he finished off Daquan Townsend. Like I said, Daquan's a kind of a journeyman at this point, which is sad because I think he's only like 28, 29, maybe early 30s, but I think he's like late 20s. He's just running. They just keep putting him in with fights that he can't win.
Yeah.
It's just bad matchups for him. Good for the other person. You wanted somebody tough that you can kind of like showcase, keep moving up in the cards. But, it is what it is. Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Honestly, man, probably really, I'm just kind of intrigued about how the fan situation is going to be in Abu Dhabi. Like they just said it's going to be limited fans, but is it going to be like 50%, 25%, 75%?
I don't even think it's going to be that. I think it's like 25 to 10%. I think it's just a scattering of fans.
Gotcha.
It's also not a very big bubble, if you remember. Like, I don't know where they're going to put the fans unless they're building the bubble out. But from what I understand, it's only like 10 to 25%. And then it's only almost like a lottery for them to like kind of come to the card. So we'll see how they handle that. It's the middle. It's Abu Dhabi. It's the Middle East. It's not an American fight card. It's not the Vegas one. So who knows how that's going to go? I think they just want some more noise inside that bubble to kind of pump it up. I feel like they could have done it before, but they were just being extra cautious. I don't think Abu Dhabi's had any restrictions on fans.
Yeah.
I think that's just a UFC thing, trying to be careful and not have more on their plate than they can handle as far as fighters and what happens if a fan gets sick. We've seen wrestling deal with that as well. AEW's kind of done a good job where they got the fans all the way up, like in the high rises, watching the show. WWE tried it for a little bit, but then they had like a COVID outbreak at the Performance Center. With some of the fans.
I know they do it for NXT. They let fans around the ring.
I don't even think those are fans anymore. I think those are plants now.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I think those are like Performance Center recruits. Because they had like somebody, and they all had masks and stuff on, but somebody had caught COVID who was at that kind of like little ringside behind the plexiglass area. And they stopped doing fans for a while. And then of course they did the Thunderdome, and now the NXT is now over in the NXT arena. No, they're not at Full Sail anymore. They're at the Performance Center.
It's at the Capitol Wrestling Center.
They changed the name of the Performance Center to represent like their original name, Capitol Wrestling. A lot of people don't know that. Back in the day, before WWF, they were called Capitol Wrestling, and that's where that kind of comes from. I had to look it up myself, and I'm a lifelong wrestling fan. I was like, what? But go back in history. Talking about like the 50s, 60s, they were called Capitol Wrestling in New York. So that is where that comes from. Kind of a quick first episode back, but start of the year, we haven't had a lot of fights to talk about. Everything's kind of getting going again. Of course, we had the situation. I do want to take a second. I am going to put it in the show notes. Make sure you check out the link. Yes, they did reach their goal. And yes, there has been such an outpouring support for Sergio's family, but don't stop. Don't stop. Take a second. I don't care if it's $1. I don't care if it's $2. I don't care if you're just sharing the link. So somebody else who might see it and might be able to contribute. This is a tough time for everybody. Money is tight for everyone. But, that family lost an incredible human being and somebody that we will always remember. So our thoughts and prayers are definitely with the DaSilva family. Like I said, Sergio will always be a part of this show somehow, some way. Definitely in the back of our minds. I know when me and Brandon were going back and forth, and I will give Brandon credit. He got a lot more aggressive this week. He came at me a couple times. So I'm looking forward to getting some more interactions with Brandon one-on-one, and then also getting some great special guests in here from time to time. But going forward, Brandon and I both kind of agreed it's kind of going to be a two-man show, which may mean the episodes might go a little bit faster, which I guess will be a little bit better for everybody. But we definitely will try to get some special guests on from time to time. I was talking to David Fish, the MMA lawyer, about maybe getting some guests in. That he has a lot of connections as well. Of course, we'll see people like Bradley DeSier. We'll see people like Shorty Rock and some other people, Jonathan Webb, and some other people we've had in the past. So definitely some things to look forward to in 2021. I'm excited. I'm hoping, I didn't like curse all of those cards by talking about some of the stuff coming up. But we can't, just keep talking about the same things over and over again. So it's definitely great to have some new stuff coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Art of MMA, episode number 14. We're back. We'll see you next week to talk about the Holloway Kattar fallout. And of course, a fight that we talked about nonstop when it first got talked about, McGregor Poirier 2. It's coming. It's close. And so we'll talk about that. But for Brandon and myself, this is Art of MMA. We'll see you next week.